All right, everyone, welcome to session 8, bittersweet. Saving the best for last. Professor Krishna is going to do a Q&A for the whole session, and just really want to thank him for all of his time and love and support, and to all of you as well for all the wonderful questions and interest in this beautiful topic. So thank you.
So good day, everyone. As Donna just mentioned, this is our last session together this year. And we have covered 35 chapters of the book which we were studying. So I thought instead of doing 5 more chapters, which will still leave another 20 out, we might use this session to take up any questions concerning Krishnamurti's teachings, if anybody has any doubts, because we have all been studying the teachings, and there may be doubts in the minds of participants. So this session is not restricted only to the chapters of the book. You could ask from your readings of this book or of any other book of Krishnamurti or a video which you have listened to. If it's a burning question for you, please put it in the chat and we'll take it up. And then if we run out of questions on chat and there is still time left, we can take up questions orally also. The only condition is that the questioner should not make a long speech before asking the question, because that would occupy the time which other participants can use for asking questions. So with those introductory remarks, I throw it open to you. Maybe Casimir can begin with asking the questions which are already there on chat or email.
Yes, we have one question so far. We can start with the question from Jayananda Hirandani.
A little louder, Casimir.
Yes. Is it better now?
Yes, this is much better.
Okay, great. We have one question from Jayananda Hiranandani. Krishnamurti's vision of education is of great importance. What is being done to disseminate it to schools other than those run by the Krishnamurti Foundation?
Not very much, because even to realize the atmosphere which Krishnaji wanted his schools to have for the education of the children is difficult enough, and we are not able to really come up to that requirement, mostly because of finding the difficulty of finding teachers with the right kind of understanding. And also because the school is, after all, part of society, and parents send their children and they are conditioned. The children are conditioned, the parents are also conditioned. And the school has to affiliate to a board. That's one of the social conditions, because the classes end after high school and the children have to get a certificate which would be recognized by a college or a university for admission. So all those boundary conditions make things very difficult for creating the atmosphere that Krishnaji mentions, which in the last session which we had, I had projected a PowerPoint in which I pointed out the various requirements of that vision. So it's not easy to achieve, but it's wonderful to attempt it to whatever extent one can. In physics, we call that as trying to solve the equations within the boundary conditions. If you don't have boundary conditions, it has very little meaning to solve the equation. It becomes only of theoretical interest. So you have to solve the equation within the boundary conditions, and the boundary conditions are laid down by society. And that's the major hurdle. Apart from the hurdle which is innate, which is our own conditioning, the teachers are not free of their conditioning, nor are we. So we are wanting to create that kind of education, and our own mind is also in the way. That's a difficulty we have discussed in several of the sessions. And this is the reason why even the schools run by the foundation are fairly limited in their ability. So to advocate to other schools that they should adopt this doesn't seem right, because let them use their own ways of doing things. One can talk about the vision and leave it there, but we have ourselves not done what Krishnamurti wanted done. None of the case schools have been able to do that. We do discuss the limitations, and those discussions are correct, but that doesn't resolve the problem. So we are not in a position to disseminate anything other than the vision of Krishnamurti.
Thank you, Professor. The next question is from Krishnamurti. Actually, there are two questions, so I will read the first one only.
Yeah.
Dear Professor, what does it mean when we say live the teaching? Are we not creating a goal to be achieved, the ideal, and therefore moving away from what is?
No, because he has made it very clear that you can't practice virtue, so you can't define what you need to do and then practice it. This is not one of those things. The only way you can really live the teachings is to come upon the wisdom with which those teachings were produced. And that is the difficulty. You cannot really decide to live the teachings. It's not a set of do's and don'ts. That kind of do's and don'ts have been prescribed by almost all religions, and they have not succeeded. So there was a philosopher in Japan called Basho in the 17th century who made this point very clear. He said, don't try to follow the wise man. Pursue the wisdom which he had. Because without the wisdom, the following becomes mechanical. It becomes merely imitation. And that is not living the teaching.
And now the second question. In some of his talks, Kay pointed out Use the teaching as a mirror in which you see yourself clearly. Once you understand yourself completely, the mirror has no value and you can break it or throw it away. What is the right approach?
I think the right approach is what he is saying. You have to, because this is not simply an intellectual exercise to be understood. His teachings are not the subject matter to be understood. There are many people who understand his teachings intellectually, including myself. But that's like a professor of Buddhist philosophy or a professor of Christian theology. He is neither Christ nor Buddha. So the question of how we come upon transformation of consciousness, which is the real purpose of religion, because the virtue is there only when your consciousness is in order. So that is both the challenge, the beauty, and the difficulty of this teaching. It's really the questions you can take from Krishnamurti, and then the investigation has to be your own. And that's what it means, that in the mirror of the teachings, look at yourself and come upon those truths which are being pointed out there. It's only when you perceive the truth for yourself that it becomes a truth for you. Before that, it is just an idea of the truth. And the idea of the truth is only a thought or an opinion. It's not a perception. And truth, religious truth, lies at the level of perception. Without coming upon perception, you cannot come upon transformation of your consciousness. So understanding Krishnaji's teachings intellectually is not the purpose of this investigation. To come upon the perception of the truth for yourself, and therefore to come upon that wisdom which is there in the teachings, that is the purpose. And wisdom is not just an idea. Wisdom is an awakening of intelligence, one's own intelligence. Intelligence not as what we define it normally as ability or cleverness at a particular profession, but as what we mean by wisdom, a more holistic understanding of life and relationships. That understanding is wisdom, and that is also the true meaning of intelligence. That's how I understand Krishnaji's statement that there is no intelligence without compassion. Now, compassion is something which belongs to the heart. And so he is saying elsewhere, he has said, put your intellect in your heart. It has no value outside it. Because all these very intelligent people, so-called intelligent people, they become presidents, politicians, army generals, and so on. And they are creating war and all this. The uneducated man is not responsible for creating all this thing. So this, what we call the educated man, that's not real education according to Krishnamurti. It's only the cultivation of the intellect, which is just one small fragment of the human being. And that has created a lopsided development of the human mind, giving a lot of emphasis to the acquisition of knowledge and ability, which brings power. And power without wisdom creates this lopsided mind, which is very dangerous. Human beings are the most dangerous species on earth. They have done more destruction of their own kind as well as of nature all other species than any other species in the world. So we must question whether we are really intelligent or we have defined intelligence unintelligently.
Next, we have a question from Donna. Kay asks the question, can one live a different kind of life? Seeing how we have come together in this group over the last 8 sessions, it seems like this is a different kind of living. Is this too simplistic? Can you share what you feel he is pointing to?
I think this relates to the first question that I took up, which says that you cannot really live the teachings unless you come upon the wisdom of the teacher, which the teacher had. Because the real change at the level of consciousness occurs only through wisdom, not through knowledge and ideas and opinions. Change of opinion is a trivial thing. People with different opinions are all violent, are all greedy, all selfish, self-centered. So it doesn't bring about, knowledge doesn't bring about transformation of consciousness. And religion is about transformation of consciousness, because virtue is not simply an action already formulated, but it is a state of consciousness which is in total harmony and order, and which has ended all violence within itself. That's why the motto of the Theosophical Society, that truth is the highest religion, that's the meaning of it. You have to come upon the truth in order to be truly religious. Not simply the ideas of the truth, that can be easily obtained. You can read the Dhammapada of the Buddha and get all the ideas about Buddhist religion, but that will not bring you to the consciousness of the Buddha. The important thing about the Buddha was not the talks that he gave, but the consciousness with which he lived, which had no hatred, no jealousy, no ego, which had love and compassion and non-violence in it. So the important thing is to come upon that consciousness, not Buddha's ideas. That's trivial.
Next, we have a question from Mark Donahue. A common theme of K is to rely on perception. And yet, in Western philosophy, there is a rich vein of writing which emphasizes the dangers of relying on perception. My guess is that K is using the word perception in a way different from the way used by Western philosophers. What do you think?
Yes, this is perception which discerns what is true from what is false. And that is a different kind of intelligence which promotes self-knowledge. It's quite different from the intelligence that promotes knowledge. So this, in this area, is completely different. This religious inquiry is at the level of perception of what is true and what is false, so that the false ends at a depth. You perceive that at the depth at which the Buddha perceived it, or Jesus Christ perceived it. Not simply the idea, that's a very superficial thing. You are merely describing what the Buddha has said or what Jesus Christ has said. That description is not the described. So how do you come upon the described? That is the important thing. And that's why in all talks, or almost in all talks, Krishnamurti says, sir, don't accept what I say. Please investigate it. If it is true, if you find that it is true, which means not just intellectually, but perceptually, then it will become part of you. Then you have the truth. So he's trying to communicate the truth. He's not communicating an idea of the truth. And we turn that into an idea, and if you accept that idea as the truth, you are accepting knowledge in place of wisdom. So it's a subtle difference, and unfortunately, the educated mind has not made that differentiation, and therefore knowledge has become a barrier, because you have the knowledge and therefore you think that you have understood when you have not understood. So it becomes the knowledge becomes an illusion. There is this sentence which we must all deeply meditate or consider in Education and Significance of Life. I have quoted that earlier, but I think it relates to this question. It says, the ignorant man is not the unlearned, but the one who does not know himself. And the learned man is stupid when it depends on his knowledge to give him understanding. Understanding here meaning wisdom. So knowledge does not bring wisdom. I quoted an old verse which is quoted in The Secret Doctrine by Madame Blavatsky. This verse is not from Madame Blavatsky, but she has merely quoted it from the scriptures. It says, knowledge and wisdom, far from being one, oftentimes have no connection. Knowledge dwells in minds replete with thoughts of others. Wisdom in those attentive to their own. Knowledge is proud that it knows so much. Wisdom is humble that it knows no more. So there is a fundamental difference between knowledge and wisdom. And this quest for truth is the quest for wisdom. Because when you don't live with the truth, you are living in illusion. And that's what the Buddha said, that illusion, which he calls it ignorance, ignorance as illusion is the cause of sorrow. Sorrow meaning psychological suffering. And that's why so long as you don't have self-knowledge or wisdom, suffering is inevitable. And that's why all of us have suffering in our life. You can see the truth of this in the world, actually. You don't have to accept this. What is this war going on between Israel and Palestinians? Where is the intelligence? Where is the wisdom? Where is the compassion? We human beings are so stupid. And we have mistaken power and strength for intelligence or wisdom. After what? After this 1 million years of existence on this planet? So when will you learn? You're not really learning. And the religious mind is a learning mind, not learning knowledge, but this learning which is called self-knowledge, which is discerning what is true from what is false. And the only indication of that is by watching your own consciousness. If there is still jealousy, there is still anger, if there is still selfishness, if there is still narrowness of mind, feeling superior to others and things, comparison and all that, which means the ego, then you haven't really understood. You haven't come upon wisdom. So by watching your own consciousness honestly, you can know whether you have perceived the truth or not. But merely to have the idea of the truth and therefore to think that you have the truth is to deceive yourself. And a gross example of that is that what so in society we call religion is merely belief. It's not religion. What we call love is merely desire and attachment and so on. It's not really love. What we call sacred is something we attribute ourselves to the temple or church or an animal, and we are experiencing our own thoughts. That's not really the sacred. So when you live with superficial meanings of words, you are living in illusion. And with that state of illusion, you are taking all your decisions. That's why it goes wrong. You're not in real contact with what is the actuality. You are living in an imaginary world created by your own mind, which is all conceptual. It's not the real world. So you deceive yourself with your knowledge. And that's why knowledge is dangerous. I mean, there are chapters in this book which we are studying, which are headed with that knowledge is dangerous. Read it and also deliberate on it. Deliberate means not just mentally, but keep that in the background in your mind as a question and look at your own life and see where it applies. That kind of seeing brings perception. And that relates to another statement of Krishnamurti, where he says, the answer to a question does not lie outside the question. That means you can't get it from a book or from a teacher. It lies inside the question. So you must investigate the question for yourself in order to find it. I have likened that to the game of treasure hunt which children play, where you don't know where the treasure lies and you are searching for it. The question merely defines the area in which you are searching for it. So the truth is like that treasure. And you don't know where it lies, therefore it is pathless. If you knew where it lies, there would be a path to it. So all this is implied in Krishnamurti's teachings, the difficulty of this quest, and also the challenge and the beauty of this quest.
We have a question now from Prasad Kongara. How to reconcile these two observations? It appears that we can't come upon truth unless we are passionate about it, unless it becomes a burning passion. However, truth can't be an object of desire to be pursued. How to reconcile these two seemingly opposing points of view?
What you call passion is the active interest in engaging with a question, which is how all great discoveries were made. whether in the field of science or art or religion. All great discoveries have been made out of a passion for discovering the truth or the beauty in that enterprise. Desire has its own passion, but it is self-centered. You are trying to fulfill a desire which is an achievement which you want for yourself. So it is a self-centered passion. Now, there's no denying that the ego produces a lot of passion, but that passion is destructive. All wars are the result of that ego, of this division between we and they, and then the hatred between we and them, and the idea of victory over the other. All these victories, when you look at it with wisdom, are really defeats. You have killed so many of human beings just like you, and you have been extremely cruel, but you imagine that you have been victorious. So that victory itself is an illusion. It is that illusion which the Emperor Ashoka saw at the end of the Kalinga War. These are historical. He is a historical entity, not a mythological one. And he realized what he had done, that millions of people had died and suffered. So he realized that there is no victory in this. And that transformed him. But normally, most kings win, and then it serves their ego. They feel they have been great warriors and so on. And they don't realize the stupidity of it, of what they have done. So you can deceive yourself. You can be extremely cruel, and you can deceive yourself that you are doing something good for your own people. It's precisely what Netanyahu is going through right now in Israel against Gaza. He doesn't see the suffering of the people in Gaza. He sees his own victory because he wants to free those 40 Israelis who are in the custody of the opposition. So you get blinded by all this. And that blindness is the ignorance, coming out of the ignorance. And all suffering is coming from there. So it's easy to blame Netanyahu, but we also are all part of that. We are all contributing to that. It's just that it happens to have happened there. But only last week it was happening in between India and Pakistan here. So the mind here is not having greater understanding. It's just a matter of chance that the war is taking place there and not here. It can take place here tomorrow. The nuclear war can start between India and Pakistan. The same stupidity and lack of wisdom is affecting every part of the world. So we are all living dangerously. I have given the example, I don't remember where, but it's a valid example, that you have planted a lot of bombs in the ground. And then you are passing laws saying nobody should strike a match because it will burst and it will kill all of us. And you call that peace. Highly stupid. Why you are not asking the question, why are we putting bombs inside the ground and living so dangerously? And then saying, don't strike a match. That's precisely what we are doing. We have got all these nuclear bombs and so on. And we are saying don't use them. But why are we having all of them? So it's just that we don't have this wisdom. Otherwise, it's a beautiful earth. There's tremendous beauty in nature. And except that we have spoilt our own lives with all this lack of wisdom, with all this ignorance, it can be such a beautiful life. After all, within the country, you have found a method by which you resolve your problems by going to court or the arbitration. Why can't we accept that for the whole of the earth? Because we divide the earth into countries. Who divided? Not the dogs, not the tigers. We have divided. Why? Because some king acquired a property, fought a war, expanded his domain, and so on. That's how these boundaries of the countries have come. And we are trapped in this history when the reality is that the whole earth is one. It is our earth. And we are human beings. And the human being in India is the same as the human being in China or in America or in Palestine. It's our stupidity that makes us feel that we are separate and that we can have security for our own group by destroying the other groups. So all this suffering is coming out of ignorance, which is what the Buddha taught 2,500 years ago, that ignorance is the cause of suffering. But we have not really understood the deep meaning of those words, that ignorance is the cause of suffering. We have defined ignorance superficially as lack of knowledge, and we have defined suffering as something that comes externally, as accidentally, without realizing that we are contributing to it. So all that is the ignorance. And you can't get rid of it without watching yourself honestly and knowing that you don't know. This fact that you know that you don't know is the real intelligence. And that's, unless that state is there, there is no real inquiry. You are merely doing propaganda for your own views, which is plentifully going on. Socialism does that, communism does that, all isms, all religions, they are all spreading their own propaganda as truth and seeking victory for their truth. Really speaking, for their illusion which they are spreading. So this is the true state of humanity. And how is that state to change? It has not changed for 1,000,000 years. And we are humanity, each one of us. So you can only begin with yourself, and that is what Krishnamurti is pointing out, that unless you change, society cannot change, because you are part of society. Society is built by us. And if we don't change deeply in our consciousness, nothing changes. You can have better bridges, faster aeroplanes and so on. All that is already happening. But look at the suffering, look at the killing. All that has gone on for, I don't know, maybe 1,000,000 years, and it's still going on, and is much worse than now because of all the nuclear power and knowledge which we have acquired. So I'm sorry, but it does look very, very dismal. The future of humanity is very dismal. As a scientist, I would say the chances of our coming out of this before a big cataclysm or Armageddon takes place are next to zero, close to zero. Sorry, it's not a pessimistic statement. This is a scientific statement. And the real cause is this. It is in the psyche of man.
Now I will read the question from Krishnamurti. Dear Professor, while talking about fear, Kay says, when you approach a wild animal with love and affection, it reciprocates that love and does not harm you. Is that so?
I don't know for certain because I have not really made a pet of a dangerous animal like a tiger or a wolf. So I don't have first-hand experience. But I have read these stories of people going to Africa and befriending tigers and so on. And those tigers or those wild elephants, they become like friends and they protect you. Of course, they live by their instincts. They don't live by their thoughts. So you have to be careful. The instinct is still there, as it is there in man also, all this sadism, the joy that human beings get in seeing the suffering of their so-called enemies, is sadistic joy which you get. And that kind of thing is, instinct is there in animals too. You must have seen that. They get sadistic joy in torturing other creatures. But human beings can do that in a very much larger scale. You can starve 1 million people in Gaza and feel that you are untwisting them for achieving some end of your own. So that all that, how is all this to end? Unless the heart changes. There is no heart. You're living only by the mind. That is the problem. So that is what Krishnamurti's sentence, that put your intellect in your heart. It has no value outside it. It's a very strong statement. It has no value outside it. We have attached so much value to intellectual achievement, all this computer science, this, that, our job, our profession. All that is self-centered activity, enables you to earn a lot of money and so on, so on. But look at the ultimate end of all that. Why do you think most of the money comes from the Defense Department for all this research and projects and so on? Because ultimately they are using all these discoveries for what they call defense, which is really the stupidity of war, acceptance of the stupidity of war.
The next question is from Karthik Gupta. Where does our consciousness originate and where does it end?
What Krishnamurti has said about that is that consciousness as we know it is its content, and that content is the conditioning in our memory. What you call consciousness is just that. It's only when you free yourself of that content, which is the same thing as emptying the consciousness, or at least becoming completely detached from it, that there is what is called freedom from conditioning. And Krishnamurti has said, without freedom from conditioning, learning does not even begin, because your conditioning is deciding everything. It is judging, it is condemning, it is taking decisions. All is coming from your conditioning, and that conditioning is just an accident of birth. You were born in India in a particular family, brought up with certain ideas, and you are caught in that, trapped in that. You are in a narrow prison of your own thoughts, living in that. You could just as well have been born in China and brought up in a different family. You would have been completely conditioned differently. So we are all prisoners of our own conditioning. We are proud of our conditioning, our traditions and so on. But when you look at it intelligently, it's a stupidity. What is there to be proud of? Indian tradition. And what credit does it do to me that my ancestors produced the Upanishads and so on? So all that is false. You are deriving pride out of hierarchy and this feeling of being a separate, as if you belong to those people who produce the Upanishads. You don't. You are a stupid fool, and you are admiring those ancestors because there is nothing to admire in your own life. Sorry to be so harsh in my criticism, but I think there is elements of truth in it.
Professor Krishna, now we have a question from Vanaparthi Satyanarayana. Dear sir, I met a friend we studied with at Rishi Valley School. He said his classmates, almost 25, are all in different professions. They meet every year. Their relationships are in harmony. Is this because they have gone through case teachings?
That is very difficult to state with any certainty because every individual is different. Not all children from Rishi Valley come out with the same wisdom or same understanding. They have been exposed to Krishnamurti's teachings, that is true. And therefore, some of them have imbibed some part of it. But nobody has imbibed the whole of the teaching or come upon that wisdom. That's a fact. Neither in our schools nor in the foundations. I'm just stating a truth. The trustees of the foundations are not free people. They are not free of their conditioning. We have partially received the wisdom of the words, but to what extent that has become a reality for an individual depends on that individual, depends on the passion with which he has investigated himself in the mirror of the teachings. And that's not, nobody knows. How do you know, sir, what is actually inside me going on? Whether I am free from jealousy, from anger, and so on. I can talk about all this. But if that gives you an image that I am free, it's a false image. It's a false image. Talking about it is like being professor of physics, then I talk about physics, so I can talk about Krishnamurti's teaching, I can explain it. But that is not the truth of the teaching. The wisdom, it will be reflected in my life. The division between husband and wife, between brothers, between neighbors happens for the same reasons for which the division between Palestine and Jews is happening. It is the same between America and Russia and so on. Only that's on a larger scale, so it affects more. And your own personal life, it affects less, but it is the same at the level of consciousness. It's the same ego process which is causing all the disorder in your own life, personal life, and therefore also in society, because there are millions of human beings like you living in that disorder, and that's what creates society. So you can't change society out there. There are deep-rooted causes why society is the way it is. And it's difficult enough to change yourself, so don't try to change society. You won't be able to change society in any significant way. I mean, you can do your research and bring in one new discovery, etc. But that is just lighting a small lamp in one corner of a dark night. So all this social work which we are doing, feeling great that we have done this, we have done that, is all trivial. Mrs. Emily Lutyens called it a candle in the sun. She called it a candle in the sun. You need to be the sun, not just be content with lighting a lamp, a candle in the sun. So we are very easily satisfied saying Gandhi has done some good, Nehru has done some good, Mrs. Gandhi has done some good, Trump has done some good, and so on. Not seeing the overall picture, but being satisfied with small little happenings of what you call good. And that's also ignorance, no? So the real issues are avoided. We deceive ourselves because we feel good. You feel good in thinking about all this. You feel bad. You feel depressed when you talk about all these realities of war and so on. So again, we don't like to think that because what? Our own ego, our pleasure is spoiled. You want to be happy, you want to be cheerful, and it brings bad news to you. But that's all part of self-concern. So it's a very complex thing. That's why it needs a lot of attention, lot of complete honesty, and the passion for learning. This learning, the self-knowledge, the passion for it is not an egoistic passion. So you have to discover the passion of love. Love is where the self-centeredness is not there. The motive is not self-centered. That is an act of love. And that passion we have not cultivated. We have cultivated the passion of desire, of ambition, of ego. That destroys love. That destroys compassion. It leads to all this war and so on. When you see with a narrow mind, you feel a sense of security in that, but that's a false security. It's an illusion of security. When you see with a long vision, which is wisdom, you see that there is no security. All this insecurity is coming from these divisions. And that division is you and I are creating that division by attaching ourselves to our religion, to our country, to our language, and so on, and identifying with it, which is what that ego process is. So unless we come out of that, There is no simple solution to the world's problems because the world's problems have very deep-rooted causes, and those causes are not being addressed. We are addressing very superficial causes, like they want this land. Now Israel wants to acquire the land of Gaza. America also wants to make a Riviera there. This is their desire. What about the people who are living there, whose homes are there, and so on? They don't care. So that is the reality of our life. Sorry, it won't change easily. We can try to change. You have to come upon this wisdom. There is no solution without wisdom. Without wisdom, you can change the systems. It will still go wrong. Whatever system you adopt, whether communism, capitalism, socialism, democracy, dictatorship, military, whatever system you have evolved, it will go wrong without wisdom. And we have not concerned ourselves with wisdom. We have concerned ourselves with knowledge and power. That itself is lack of wisdom. Don't do this with the idea of saving the world. You won't be able to save the world. That is another illusion. But your own life can be different, can be joyous, can be more sensitive, can be very different from what your life is at present, if you don't approach it with self-centered motives. You can't decide to do this, but you can watch what the self-centered motives do to your life. And from that watching, the realization will come. That is a true change. The rest of it is only change of opinion, which is trivial. Opinions are very trivial things. They are not truths.
Thank you, Professor. I will read the next question, which is from Sudarshan Sud. What does Krishnamurti mean by the term universal consciousness?
There is an intelligence which is not that of the human brain. It is part of nature, nature's intelligence. You can call it God's intelligence because nature is, in a sense, the manifestation of God. Not the concept of God which religions have, but the true meaning of God is this tremendous order which is there in nature, which scientists are also studying. But what they are studying are merely the laws which are part of, which describe how that order operates. But why is there that order? That is the intelligence of nature. It is operating in your body, isn't it? 10,000 things happen in your body, just right. Without your doing anything other than eat a little food and take some exercise. A new child is born. You think all that happens mechanically? This is the intelligence of nature, the order of nature. What science, what we all describe is how that order functions. But that order is part of nature's intelligence. And with that order, this whole earth and surroundings and the universe has existed for millennia. The environment of ours has existed for millennia. It's only after industrialization that man has acquired the power to disturb it. And that's why it's causing all the ecological catastrophes. That's also part of our lack of intelligence, to regard nature not as our parent, as our master, but to regard it as a resource for economic development. A false notion for which we are paying heavy prices and disturbing the entire balance of nature, which ultimately cause ecological catastrophes. And scientists are already saying that we have reached a point of no return, and inevitable that these catastrophes come, and nobody can describe what will be the consequences of that. Terrible, that they will be terrible, but how terrible and what, we don't know. The seas will rise, the temperature will rise, the climate will change, you may not be able to grow your food, so there will be starvation and so on. All kinds of disasters will come from that because we are disturbing the balance of nature. For millions of years, man has lived in harmony with nature, not had the power to disturb nature. But now we think we have become very intelligent and we are disturbing that order of nature without having the capacity to create a new order. So all that is also part of this ignorance which is causing suffering. That's why it is not simply a question of our consciousness and our relationships with other people and so on, but also our relationship with nature, our place in nature. What is our place in nature? So many species are there. They were also created by the same laws of nature by which have created you and me. So they are our fellow living creatures. But we look upon them as consumables for our benefit, something that can be questioned. Except for the limited way where nature has provided one species as the food for another. But that's a very limited amount of violence, which is part of that order of nature. It didn't create war. War is a recent phenomenon. I mean, there were wars 1,000 years ago, but they were just fought with spears and bows and arrows and so on. Now you have nuclear bombs, you can destroy a whole city with one bomb. And those who survive will be worse off than those who die, because all that radiation will cause diseases and so on. All that has been described amply in our journals and so on. We know all that. But still we are amassing a lot of nuclear weapons and we are not having the wisdom to say that none of us is going to produce those weapons of mass destruction and so on. Why? Because we are divided into nations and we want only the welfare of our nation. We don't care about other nations. That itself is an illusion. The whole earth is one. We are all one. All humanity is one. But we have divided ourselves. So the ignorance is operating very deeply at way and having tremendous consequences. We are not even aware of all the consequences. We are dabbling with it because we think it's great intelligence to invent something new. You want to travel still faster towards what? Ultimately, you're going to die. You want to go there very fast, or you want to go there slowly, joyously. Decide for yourself what you want. Okay. That's my take on it.
Next, I will read the question from Indu Paris. Seeing is happening now, but a seer and the things one sees are the past. Is this the same as the observer is the observed?
When the observer is the observed has been interpreted in many different ways. In ancient literature and so on, also the Hindus said, you are that. Whether they meant the same thing or somewhat different, we don't know. When you are watching yourself, your anger, your jealousy, yourself, your conditioning, the watcher is not different from what is being watched. The meaning of that is that you can operate on something which is different from you, and you survive and you destroy the other thing. But anger is not like that. You can't destroy anger and survive yourself. That yourself is also producing the anger. So it's not separate from the anger. That's how I understand that statement, that in the field of self-knowledge, the observer is not separate from the observed. In the scientific field, it is. When I'm watching a pendulum, I am not the pendulum. And I can operate on the pendulum and decide things and make some modifications of it and so on. You can't do that. Which means you can't really bring about change through your will, through operating on your anger or your ego. The entity that is operating on the ego is also ego. So you can't therefore come upon freedom of the ego, from the ego. All you can do is watch. This faculty of watching is not a faculty of thought. It is the faculty of awareness, which nature has given us the capacity at birth. You are born with awareness. A child is born with awareness. That's the intrinsic quality of consciousness. The ability to think develops later. The ability to have language develops later. You can watch a child growing. A newborn child has no ego because he doesn't have that kind of capacity for imagination and thinking and language and all that. All that comes up later on. So we need those capacities. We need imagination, we need knowledge, we need memory. None of these is useless. But nature has not prescribed how we should use it. For the animal, it has prescribed. The animal is completely governed by instincts. But we are not completely governed by instinct. Instincts in man have become tendencies. You can go beyond them. Not easy, but you can go beyond them. People have done that. So it's not deterministic, which means we have to use our own intelligence to know what is the right place of knowledge, what is the right place of imagination, what is the right place of our body, and what is our relationship with this body. Is it my body? Can I use it to fulfill my desires? Or am I in charge of it and I must care for it, just as my children are not my property, but something that I'm responsible for? So all these are the deeper questions, which are questions which, when explored, bring wisdom. But our education doesn't raise these questions. They promote the ego. They want you to be powerful without wisdom. And so Krishnamurti wanted to change education. He said it's producing lopsided human beings who are creating war. The so-called intelligent people are ignorant people, and so on, which I dealt with in detail in my PowerPoint on education. You can revisit it if you have not seen it earlier. So these are the facts. And those facts have certain consequences. If you say we can't change these facts, you can't, but the facts will still operate. And you are just a pawn in the game. We are all pawns in the game to a large extent. And it may be too late to change. So don't change because you want to change the world. Change because you want to improve your own life. And because you are interested in what is true, what is real. And you don't want to live in illusion. So the desire to learn this kind of learning, self-knowledge, is not an egoistic desire. The desire to become, including the desire to become enlightened, is an egoistic desire. The moment you create a destination you have to reach, you're already approaching life egoistically. And all the consequences of the ego will be there, irrespective of how noble or ignoble your end which you have projected is. The desire for noble end is not very different from the desire for an ignoble end, except for the social consequences. The consequences of desire within your consciousness operate the same way, whether your motive is noble or ignoble. So desire itself is a problem. Approaching life with desire itself is a problem, not what you are desiring. The religions have said, have noble desires. Krishnamurti is saying, no, don't approach life with desire. It will have bad consequences for you. Don't accept what he says, but investigate it. Why does he say that? And is it true? This is a quest for truth, not for defending Krishnamurti or agreeing with Krishnamurti. This is not a quest for that. If you are interested in that quest, if you are not, go on living the way you are living. Who is anybody to object to that? But there will be consequences.
The next question is from Karan. During the process of Krishnamurti leaving his body, his subtle body left and his elemental body was still there. Does this kind of thing still happen?
I have no idea because I am not in that kind of state and I have not reached that level of understanding subtle body and real body and so on. So firsthand, I don't have anything to say about this. I don't know. To me also it is a question. All that is a great mystery. All those occult powers, how did Leadbeater see this, pick up this boy who was otherwise apparently unintelligent, unhealthy, sickly, and say that this boy is going to be the world teacher? When normally you just pick up a boy and do that, he will become what you educate him to be. This boy turned out different. So what did he really see? We don't know. I asked Krishnamurti this question. Sir, what are all those occult powers? You people used to sit in the esoteric section and talk to dead spirits called masters, bring messages from them, and so on. Was it all hallucination? I asked him this question when 1958 in January, when I met him for the first time. I was 19 years of age at that time. And he said, no, sir, those things exist. It's another form of power. It has nothing to do with goodness. So I'm not interested in it. Because he saw that within the Theosophical Society, there are people who were misusing that power, the occult power also, because they were not free from the ego. So the ego can use those powers also to do wrong things. That's why freedom from the ego is the first requirement before any power is cultivated. And religion is not really about cultivation of power. It is about cultivation of wisdom, which is the understanding of what is true and what is false. The freedom from all illusion in the mind. That's what religion is. It has been made into something else by the churches and the temples and the mosques and so on. They have brought down the truth to make it palatable, and they are using it to acquire power and domination and propaganda, all that which we see in the name of religion. All that is not religion, neither in Hinduism, nor Buddhism, nor Christianity. The same thing has happened to all the religions, and the same dangers exist for Krishnamurti's teachings also. Sooner or later, man will distort them, make a temple to Krishnamurti, make some rituals, make some methods and so on. He has talked against it, but I'm sure Buddha did all that also, and Jesus Christ must have not wanted all this church and division of Protestants and Catholics and so on. But nobody is bothered about what Jesus Christ said. They are considering the power of their own group. So all that becomes a travesty of anything called religion. So, but we are calling that religion. We think religion is belief, and it's not belief. It is this quest for what is real, what is true, and what is false.
And now I will read a question from Sam. Dr. Krishna, you're a jewel on a silver platter. What can you tell a man who is terrified, resigned, helpless in today's world of politics and violence? Please give us some practical advice to bring about hope, motivation, and love.
You must be careful. We have come to where we are because everybody is doing what they think is practical. Netanyahu is doing what he thinks is practical. Trump is doing what he thinks is practical. And anything else that you point out, they call it philosophy. Philosophy may be the truth, and what you call practical, may be an illusion. So beware of that word, practical. If you have got my book, and I don't know whether there is an article in my website which deals with this question, but I was asked to give a talk on whether Krishnamurti's teachings are practical by KFA in Ohio, and that talk has been made into a video and put on YouTube. You will have to search for it. But I pointed out this difference. It is there in my book also. If you want to read it as a chapter, is Krishnamurti's teaching practical? So if all countries are doing what is practical, then war is practical. All this living and violence and so on is practical. The way we are living is what we are calling practical, because everybody is doing what he thinks is practical. So really speaking, the truth is that it's not practical. It's an ignorance which regards it as practical. And what you call philosophy is probably the real, but you have not really discovered that to be real. Therefore, you go on with this illusion of the so-called practical. Practical means give me a method which will immediately solve my problems. Immediate solution to problems are trivial. The problems are too deep. They're originating from causes within the psyche of man. Without solving those problems, you can solve something on the surface. A couple who were divorcing from each other, you can bring them together, give them some peace and wisdom, make them live together again. But it won't stop their quarreling. It won't change the fact. They'll again come to the divorce. Again, you will be doing that. The same thing is happening between countries. United Nations is making peace. Then again they fight. Then again you do like that. It's not a solution. These are what we call practical is a temporary solution. It's like aspirin. Aspirin has a role. If you have very severe headache, which you can't even think about what to do, take an aspirin, reduce the pain, and then search for the medicine for your disease. So it has a certain value. But if you regard the aspirin itself as the cure, go on taking aspirin, it won't cure you. So all these practical things, including practical meditation, these are all temporary things, brings peace of mind, but that peace of mind will be destroyed for the same reason you didn't have it before. Because the cause of it, the disturbance has not been eliminated. The cause of the disorder is not eliminated, but temporarily you feel peaceful. You can get that by going to the church and attending a ceremony or going to a temple and singing those bhajans. You will feel peaceful for a while, but it won't change anything. It won't transform your consciousness. So beware of this. They become escapes. Religion has become an escape for humanity. It's not an escape. Real religion is this quest for wisdom. So beware of what you call practical, whether it is really practical.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor. I would like to turn it over back to you, Professor Krishna, and to Prasad and Donna for last remarks during today's lecture.
Yeah, I want to thank all of you for your patience and your friendship in tolerating me and listening to what all I say. Don't accept these as truths. Don't accept even what Krishnamurti has pointed out as truths. You have to discover the truth for yourself.
Thank you.
When anybody makes a speech or says something, listen to it, consider it, find out whether it is true. That is this learning. Not quickly form an opinion, oh, this doesn't agree with that, oh, it is interpretation, oh, it is this. That's a stupid way of listening to a statement. Listen even to Hitler, what he is saying. There may be elements of truth in it, and there may be a lot of nonsense. Throw away the nonsense and take up the truth. That is the nature of this understanding, this listening. It's not discarding the whole. It's not judging the person who is speaking. It's looking at the statement which he is making. That man is making a statement, he sincerely thinks that. The important thing is not to agree with it or disagree with it, but to find out if there are elements of truth in it. And if there are not, then discard. Discard the false, but don't discard along with it the truth. Otherwise, you are throwing away the baby with the bathwater. And that kind of listening, we have not been trained to do. We have been trained to judge the speaker and discard the speaker or follow the speaker, which is both nonsensical. Following the speaker you can't do. Discarding the speaker, then it doesn't even enter into your consciousness. So this whole idea of either accepting a statement or rejecting it are just two unintelligent ways of responding to a statement. Then what is the third way? Intelligent way. Listen to it. Ask yourself, what is he trying to convey? What is the meaning of all the words he's using? And then ask yourself, is that true? Don't answer that question quickly from your memory, because then you will answer from your own conditioning. Stay with that question, watch your consciousness and life, and from your watching, discern whether it is true or it is false. If it is false, drop it. If it is true, then it has value because it is true, not because so-and-so said it, not because Buddha said it or Krishnamurti said it. That's accepting on authority. No. When you perceive that to be true, then only you know what the truth is. Okay, sir. Thank you very much for tolerating my all this, what I have subjected you to. And wish you all the best in life.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Krishna. Just wanted to say a few words. Our good friend Saeed has just wrote that you are a jewel on the silver platter. He is spot on because our world is full of words, full of books, full of knowledge, concepts, but true wisdom is very rare. True humility, as we can see, right now, is very rare, and true integrity is very rare. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much for just being you, sir. And but also I would like to note that these sessions, these 1.5 hour sessions, they require some preparation, they require some efforts, and thank you so much for taking your time and giving your energy to this. We very much appreciate it. And also I thank all the participants for being here. I know this is a crazy world and we are in a crazy times. It is very easy to feel despair and kind of feel hopeless. But we are all here, if we are, listening to care not for any selfish purpose, but a selfless inquiry, and for participating in this inquiry together. My gratitude to all of you as well.
That is our real relationship, Prasad. We are fellow pilgrims in this inquiry.
Yes.
But
Very
the
much
real
so.
jewel, I am not the jewel. The teaching is the jewel.
Okay, that's right.
So anybody, if you want to add, say a few things, we don't have a lot of time, but maybe one or two times. Donna. Oh, by the way, thank you so much for, Donna and Krishna for making this so smooth and effortless. We couldn't have done without them. Donna, you
And
want to
thank
say
you,
a few things
Prasad.
on Krishna? Yeah.
So, yes, thank you, Prasad and Krasimir, and of course, Professor Krishna. It is it's an honor really to be with all of us together, and I don't take it lightly that we have each other and that we can inquire together. And thank you for your humility and your kindness and grace. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Please.
Hello, Krishna. I just wanted to say thank you for all the wisdom that you provide to us.
So I also learn every time I interact with all of you and investigate the question. Every time you probably pick up some truths you have not earlier seen very clearly, and that is the reason to do it.
Okay. Salvador needs your attention. He experienced something difficulty in his life. If you have a chance to send him a text or call him, he appreciates that.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Hopefully we'll be able to see Dr. Krishna in another session and make
Yes.
God bless all of us. Dr. Krishna, thank you
Yeah,
for your
we
class.
as long as he's willing and he has time and energy, we're going to organize this. We've been doing this for several years. We hope to do that in the future as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Krishna. It was very insightful and very enriching, educating experience. Thoroughly enjoyed the sessions, and my sincere gratitude. Thank you, Professor Krishna.
Thank you.
Dr. Krishna, don't give up on us.
I cannot do that.
Yeah,
No, you will
I'm not
not.
different from you. I mean, I'm also giving up on myself. I'm not giving up.
Yeah.
Wishing you
Okay.
good health and please
Yes.
take care, Professor Krishna. We
Thank
want
you.
you to please take care.
Bye, everybody.